Hello everyone, I've been busy lately with family and trying to find the time to play the tournament. This video will be showing my experience playing the Ascension tournament. My goal was to get top 75 to get 1000 tournament coins, which would allow me to get an outfit. I'll show the tournament rule set now. There was 10 hours total playtime with 4 hours max per day. Experience was granted 85 times faster, while skills increased 90 times faster. Also, spawn rate and loot rate were double. There were also a large list of creatures that you couldn't kill during the tournament. Killing any of these creatures would cause you to lose 50 points. A lot of these creatures were found in the early to mid-game spawns, where you would normally level up, which made it a little bit of a tough start. You gained 47 points per level, 35 points per skill level, gained the charm points times 10 for unlocking any creature, 2,750 points for discovering an area, and lost 200 points for any character deaths, as well as the points for any levels or skills you lost. This is the last tournament in Tibia, and only the second one I played. I didn't expect to rank that high, but I'd have to see how I did. I chose to start in Port Hope and play a paladin, as that is basically the only vocation I'm good at. The first thing I did was to buy all the spells I would need and get me through the early game. I then went to the depot to buy other supplies like some basic equipment, arrows, manas, etc. I chose to hunt the southern part of Port Hope first with terror birds. I figured this would be a good option because there was lots of space to run, as I got my first few levels and increased my distance. There also weren't too many creatures here that I couldn't attack, only a few poison spiders. I stayed here until level 30, then moved to tarantulas. Spending some time in the tarantula caves, I was able to upgrade my equipment slightly by finding brass legs and brass helmet quite quickly. I then grabbed more levels here until I bought a brass armor during one of my resupplies and eventually looted a steel helmet. I stayed here until level 57. When I went back to town to resupply, I then transitioned to apes. In my opinion, my opening wasn't terrible, but it definitely could have been better. There's a smuggler cave in Port Hope to the northwest of the depot that could have been a better starting spawn. Also, I could have transitioned from tarantulas to apes a lot sooner. I even could have skipped right from terror birds or smugglers to apes, most likely would have been a better choice. I spent 3,000 gold on Divine Caldera, which I wouldn't be using anytime soon, which made me unable to afford many Onyx arrows. I also used up all my arrows before switching to the Onyx arrows because I thought it would save me money, but overall it just made me level slower. I was making more than enough profit that I could have hunted with the full Onyx arrows. Anyways, once I finally switched to apes, my experience was a lot better. I was able to grab quite a few levels here. I was able to replace my brass armor with the plate armor. I was able to grab several more levels and finish my first night of the tournament at level 75 after using 2 hours and 8 minutes of my tournament time. I feel like if I made the transition to apes and Onyx arrows sooner, I could have finished the night level 90 or more, even if I had just remained at apes. I was unsure of my next spawn, so I gave it some thought until the next day. I finished this night at rank 39. I'd given it lots of thought, and I figured a decent creature that would be fairly safe to hunt would be giant spiders. I'd considered other spawns, but I knew my gold was low, and thought giant spider would be a low risk of dying while making some nice profit with a chance of several equipment upgrades. Starting day 2 of the tournament, I had dropped to rank 47. I chose to buy some firewall runes, because I was still quite slow at level 75, and went to spawn in the southeast of Port Hope in the ruins. From here on, there's not much I would change about my tournament experience. I thought I played it quite well, with only a few minor mistakes. I still believe my biggest mistake was my opening to the tournament, and not moving to apes sooner. Once I got the giant spiders, I was able to find knight armor on the ground right away to replace my plate armor. It was fairly dangerous at first as I was getting my walls set up. The kills were slow, but the experience was still quite a bit better than apes. Every level I got made the hunt easier. My experience per hour would go up and the risk of dying would go down. I was also able to pick up plate legs off the ground and replace my brass legs. It looks like someone else had looted knight legs previously, which was my goal as well. I was able to stay here until I got level 90, which allowed me to grab crystalline arrows on my first resupply. This made the spawn a lot easier. I was able to kill the giant spiders a lot more efficiently and didn't have to rely on firewalls anymore. I continued leveling until I needed to resupply again. I came back to giant spiders getting several more levels, eventually looting a platinum amulet, but still unable to get knight legs. I left giant spiders at level 116, killing 226 giant spiders without looting knight legs. That is the equivalent of killing 552 giant spiders on a regular server because of the double loot. The chance of getting knight legs is 1 in 120, so statistically I should have looted 4 to 5 pairs, which was unlucky. My next steps were to buy Salvation and head to Ormond Minotaurs. It was a little dangerous at first, but the levels came in quickly. I was making lots of profit, which I would need later. There isn't much to add to this spawn. The experience and profit were great, so I leveled here until I was level 162. I then changed my focus to discovery. I stocked up on fire bombs, energy bombs, and strong mana potions as I would need them. I had just over an hour and a half left for the day and decided to start with Abdendriel. I first did the town itself, then Draconia. I took white mushrooms so I could use the dragon fetish to teleport out. I then completed Abdendriel's surroundings and Elvenbane. It took me 30 minutes to fully discover Abdendriel, and it bumped me up to rank 5. My next plan was to discover Dyrachia. The city itself went quite quickly, but I had a pain doing the surroundings. I managed to map everything to the north and east of the city without finding a single point. It was almost 10 minutes of mapping the surroundings before I found my first point. Everything then went smoothly until the very end. I managed to map the whole area and was 1 point short. I thought I had fully explored every area, but when looking, I noticed I missed one little area using the Tibia Maps IO overlay. I went here and luckily found the point. I had missed it by only a few square meters. If it wasn't for that, I would have had to reset points most likely. The entire sub-area had already wasted almost 20 minutes of my time. This is not good. Oh my god, it was right in the middle of that one little area I missed. Yikes. Dyrachia. I then went to Dyrachia and got very lucky. I was able to find 6 out of 7 points in the 5 minutes I had. On my way to explore the second Dyrachia area, I ran out of time for the day, getting kicked. I ended the day at rank 5. I started day 3 with 3 hours and 52 minutes left, and I dropped down to rank 42. I immediately picked up where I left off with my discovery. I quickly found the last point in Dyrachia. I then had to move on to complete Minotaur Pyramid and Lion's Rock to finish Dyrachia. I had some stealth rings I looted from Orman Minotaurs that made the Minotaur Pyramid easy. My concern was getting trapped and having to kill any Minotaurs or Minotaur guards because they would cost me 50 points. Once the Minotaur Pyramid was complete, I moved on to Lion's Rock. I had to do the quest to gain access, and luckily I had already looted a Cobra Tongue when I was running back and forth to the ape spawn in Benuta in my early levels. During the previous tournament, I spent almost 15 minutes attempting to loot one. My main worry here was getting trapped in the Ancient Scarab area. If I did, there'd be no way out without having to kill them, which was a 50-point penalty. Luckily, with my fire bombs, everything went smoothly. Once I fully unlocked Dyrachia, I jumped from rank 40 to rank 28. Next on my list to discover was Quarfang. This is a very quick discovery, but can be dangerous. The first 2 areas are quite easy. On Grey Beach, there are no creatures to worry about, and the hive pools are also quite simple. You do have to watch here as well, that there's a penalty for killing swarmers and insectoid scouts. Luckily, none of the creatures here walk over fire, which allowed me to use plenty of fire bombs again. During the last tournament, I managed to die when attempting to go up the tower to the southeast because I wasn't as high of a level and didn't have as much cash to spend on supplies. This time, I was in a lot better position, but ended up able to skip it anyways. I found all the points I needed without needing to go up the tower. In total, from the time I stepped on Quarfang, I completed my discovery and left in under 10 minutes. This jumped me from rank 28 to 21. Next, I decided to discover Kralos. There isn't much to say about Kralos' Steppe. It was very large and open. It took over 10 minutes to run around and was pretty uneventful. The discovery of the Ogre Village was quick, so nothing special there. The next challenge was the Kralos Ruins. I didn't do this during the last tournament because I didn't have enough supplies, but I set myself up quite well this time. Again, the issue was I couldn't kill Nightmare Scions or I would lose points. Also, it was tricky to make it through all the narrow pathways. Neither creature would run over energy, but I had fewer energy bombs because they were more expensive. So I used fire bombs and walls as much as I could. All in all, things went quite well, and it was time to move on to the Kralos mines. I explored the mountain and found a few points, but it had been quite a while, so I did forget how to actually get into the mines, though I did stumble across it quite quickly. This was a quick sub-area to complete, which allowed me to completely discover Kralos. Surprisingly, it only bumped me from rank 20 to 21. I then set my sights on Thias. I started with the city itself, which went well. It was only a few minutes to complete. I exited the east gate to rent a horse mount, and began exploring the surroundings. This started off surprisingly well. I had my first 6 points in under 10 minutes, but it did take me another 10 minutes to find the last point. Once I completed it, I headed right to Fibula. Fibula was almost a 10-minute completion, but I managed to miss a point in the Bone Lord area. It was just off my screen by 2 square meters. This ended up adding over 5 minutes to my time. I then had to log out to spend some time with my family. The few skills I picked up while exploring Thias allowed me to end my 3rd day at rank 16 with 2 hours and 13 minutes left to play. I then logged in for my 4th and final day of the tournament, starting at rank 30. I picked up where I left off discovering Thias. I went to the Thias Troll Caves first, which was a quick and uneventful completion. I then went to Mount Sternum, which was a pain last tournament as well. I spent 7 minutes mapping the entire mountain and found not a single point. They were all located underground. I then spent another 10 minutes navigating the underground maze to complete the sub-area. All that was left was Greenshore. This was a very quick completion. It was done in 3 minutes, which allowed me to complete Thias and jump from rank 30 to 23. This was the point where I had a tough decision. I had an hour and 40 minutes left, which most likely have been enough to discover another area, but wouldn't leave me much time to train. If I had a bit of extra time, maybe I would have considered it, but none of the areas appealed to me because they were so large. Khazad-dûm and Venor both had many sub-areas. Edron seemed like the best choice, but I was kind of low on supplies, which could have made it difficult to do the Were Creatures and Cyclopolis. Also, Were Creatures were another creature that you couldn't kill or you'll lose points. I decided to begin my training now and went to Port Hope, which was a mistake. I thought the slime would summon enough to keep up, but that wasn't the case. I wasted 5 minutes of time there before I decided to think of somewhere else on the fly. I decided on Rorks. I got 2 Rorks on me so I could train melee, shielding, and head up the coast fishing. I arrived here at rank 20 and began to slowly overtake people. My plan was to boost each of my melee skills, fist, club, sword, and axe, to 35, all while getting shielding and fishing. I ended up getting my fist to 38, club to 38, sword to 37, axe to 37, shielding to 71, and fishing to 36. In total, this ended up giving me 4,305 tournament points in 1 hour. I moved from position 21 all the way up to position 8. I then had only 30 minutes left and figured the best use of my time would be leveling. I went to Thias to stock up on a few more supplies and go back to Ormond Minnows. I made the mistake of spending all my money on manas and didn't have enough money for the boat. I had to waste a bunch of mana so I could sell the flasks to get boat money. I then just leveled as quickly as I could at Ormond Minnows for that last 30 minutes. I'd been bumped down to rank 9 by someone that was doing discovery. My position didn't change as I gained my levels. I managed to get my last level with 1 second left, finishing my tournament time at levels 175 and rank 9, though there were still 2 days to go. At this point, I thought I did quite well. I was hoping I could hang on to the top 20. There wasn't anything I could do as I watched over the next 2 days as I dropped down to rank 48 out of 289 players. This was a little disappointing. My original goal was top 75, and I'd beaten that by a fair amount, so I couldn't complain. This was only my second tournament, so it would be possible for me to play better if there were more down the road, but they're also flawed as the majority of the high-ranking players have multiple accounts and or friends to boost them. For example, there were players on my server that finished with negative 200,000 points or more. People use their friends or other characters to collect money, equipment, and boost their main character when they are going for the win. If it wasn't for that, I have no idea where I would place. It'd be interesting to know how many people above me in rank were solo players that only played one character. I wonder if my rank would have only increased by 5 to 10 spots, or if I would have jumped by upwards of 20 to 30. As I mentioned previously, this was only my second tournament I played. I managed to collect 2,200 tournament coins, so I'll have to decide what I will purchase. I was definitely leaning towards one of the outfits. Let me know in the comments below what combination of outfit, mount, or items you would buy with the points I have. Overall, I did enjoy the 2 tournaments I played, and it did make me wish I had played more previously. Though I didn't have that much cash to waste joining tournaments when they first came out, and they weren't as appealing until CIP doubled the rewards. Also, I do not think I would ever be in the position to win a tournament, but definitely shows how flawed they are when one team's strategy is to end up with negative 200,000 points or more. I have nothing against the players to play this way though, if they are just making the best use of the rule set and options that CIP provided, though it may not necessarily be in the Nintendo way. Anyways, if you stuck around for this long, I appreciate it. Feel free to like and subscribe to help me out, and I'll see you in the next video. Happy hunting. 6 seconds, 5 seconds, oh no. There, level 175. Haha. Just squeezed that one in.